There's a sense to my mind, and it's connected with that idea of transfiguration, of a power, a communion, a wholeness, and an understanding that is veiled, that is hidden within Tolkien's conceit that this is our world in a basically in a pre-pagan, era even. They are anticipating, they are looking forward, they are discerning from afar in time a reality that they can barely, hint at. They are, anticipating the resurrection, and the most that we hear anyone say about that is probably Aragorn on his deathbed in the appendices. We are not bound forever to the circles of the world, and beyond them is more than memory. But maybe a little bit of that sense, that almost kind of ties together that transfiguration reality with letting the veil drop, or with Frodo perhaps being able to see beyond the veil in a moment. But what he's seeing is someone who is functioning as, this is pushing it too far, but as a member of the great cloud of witnesses who hoped and lived in faith and trust, knowing what they were waiting for, but were not, allowed to see it. And Tolkien makes that fairly explicit in the Athrabeth. And I'm assuming all of you are familiar with the Athrabeth of Finrod and Andreth from Morgoth's Ring. That was my first episode on here, 6 years ago now. If you have it, I would recommend it highly as Bright Week reading. The basic conceit is, to try to sum up what I've talked about before, and frankly, I think this is the most Paschal thing Tolkien ever wrote, although it's veiled. But the conceit is a conversation between Finrod before the Battle of Dagor Bragollach, I believe, of the Sudden Flame. And hopefully, I'm not mixing up my Silmarillion. He has a conversation with a wise woman of the House of Beor, so would be probably a great aunt of Beren. So it's in that era, and she's getting old, and he's basically coming and saying, "It's okay, you're going to die. You are meant to die. This is the gift of the one to men." And she says, "You say that all the time, you elves, and you make us crazy with it because our belief is that we were not created to die, that we were created to live forever." And then you have this really interesting, well, interesting to me, philosophical discussion with Finrod saying, "What do you mean live forever? Because you think we elves are immortal, but we don't live forever either. We expect an end because Arda will end, and our life is bound to Arda. So when it ends, we will end, and we have no hope of any life that goes past that. So we aren't immortal. We don't live forever. We live as long as the earth does, and that is why we have sorrow." Is that what you mean? You were supposed to live, as long as the world? And she says, "No. I mean, I didn't know that about elves, but uh, we believe, we were taught, it's handed down from, parent to child, that man was, we were created to live without end, forever, actually forever." And he says, if if that's what you say, then and you say that the enemy, that Morgoth took this from you. I will tell you that if this was your birthright from the one, Morgoth could never take that gift from you. So what did you men do in the dark of your past? And she's like, I'm not going to talk about that. So now we've all of a sudden intuited a fall. But Finrod is delightful, and he effectively jumps and says, "But if that's true, then you have just brought hope to me and to all of the elves, because it implies that Eru built into the creation from the very beginning, a hope, a continuance, a healing to Arda Mard that the elves had never even hoped for." And this is where I want to pick up in reading. He says, "This is strange to me, and even as your heart did when I spoke of your unrest, so now mine leaps up as at the hearing of good news. This then I propound was the errand of men, not the followers, but the heirs and fulfillers of all, to heal the marring of Arda already foreshadowed before their devising, and to do more, as agents of the magnificence of Eru, to enlarge the music and surpass the vision of the world. For that Arda healed shall not be Arda unmarred, which we're not rewinding, but a third thing and a greater and yet the same. I have conversed with the Valar, who were present at the making of the music ere the beginning of the world began, and now I wonder, did they hear the end of the music? Was there not something in or beyond the final chords of Eru which, being overwhelmed thereby, they did not perceive? Or again, since Eru is forever free, maybe he made no music and showed no vision beyond a certain point. Beyond that point, we cannot see or know until by our own roads we come there, Valor or Eldar or men. Yeah, and they kind of skips it. So then, skipping ahead, Andreth says, "What then would you say is the supreme moment that Eru has reserved?" Ah, wise lady, said Finrod, I am an Elda, and again I was thinking of my own people. But nay, of all the children of Eru, I was thinking that by the second children we might have been delivered from death. Forever, as we spoke of death being a division of the united, I thought in my heart of a death that is not so, but the ending together of both. So a permanent death. For that is what lies before us, the Eldar, so far as our reason could see, the completion of Arda and its end, and therefore also of us children of Arda, the end when all the long lives of the elves shall be wholly in the past. And then suddenly I beheld as a vision Arda remade, and there the Eldar completed but not ended, could abide in the present forever, and there walk maybe with the children of men, their deliverers, and sing to them such songs as even in the bliss beyond bliss should make the green valleys ring, and the everlasting mountain tops to throb like harps. And then they get lost, but Andreth says, but we lost that. We lost that power. Now we die. How can we, we have no, he says, she says, if by our aid your everlasting mansions were to be prepared, they will not be built now. And Finrod says, have you then no hope? Uh, and I did this in the episode. I need to not do it again. But she basically says, I have no hope, but there are those of my people, and to such questions of how anything could be fixed, to such questions, only those of the old hope, as they call themselves, have any guess of an answer. And you know, and Finrod says, "What is the old hope?" And she says, "Well, they say that the One will himself enter into Arda and heal men and all the marring from the beginning to the end. This they say also, or they feign, is a rumor that has come down through years uncounted, even from the days of our undoing." And Tolkien doesn't really push beyond that, but uh, the hope, the word hope that he uses, uh, is Estel. And if we remember, that was Aragorn's name as a child. And I think that the idea Tolkien has is, I think this was supposed to be like an appendix to the Silmarillion, in the same way that the tale of Aragorn and Arwen was an appendix to the Lord of the Rings, and I think that they're intended to be a matched pair, so that this passage tells us that the wise among the elves, from this conversation with the wise among those first generations of humans that came into the West, they've learned something of each other, and they've intuited something about the role of men. This is why they're willing to leave, why they remain, why they have this sorrow, why they have this love for human beings. And this is the hope that somehow Aragorn is carrying all the way through, so that at the end, Arwen, who has, as it seems, the lost the portion of the elves, Arwen has gained something, even if it is gained in grief. Arwen has gained a part in the resurrection. Arwen has gained that destiny that is hidden, that life that is hidden with Christ in God. Again, Tolkien wasn't willing to push it that far, but Anyway, to my mind, this is the most Paschal thing that Tolkien wrote, and this is behind every one of these other passages that we're reading.